This is a sign by the cardinals that rather than choosing somebody from Asia or from Africa, they wanted to actually insidiously nominate and elevate to the pontificate somebody who is American. It's the first time in history, but Robert Francis Prevost is no friend of Donald J. Trump. He is, of course, somebody who comes from Chicago, but also with a vast history in South America that connects him to the infamous Jesuit order. And he is from an order himself, the Augustinians, who have worked hand in hand with the Jesuits on the control of the educational establishment. Today, if you think about the main issues Trump is trying to fight, immigration policies, well, in this regard, he will have to fight against this Pope because he's very much a supporter of what the Democrats were doing, open borders and all the rest. It's gonna be a war against Trump waged by the church every day, in which we will hear, of course, from this Pope what you might hear from the Democratic Party, which has demonstrated in the last few years to be the political branch of the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order here in the United States. So it's not a good day. Some Americans might perceive it as a good day. For those who were hoping in a traditional Pope, in somebody who will support also a return to the Latin Mass, this will be, of course, a disappointment because this Pope has no intention in going back, but rather in moving forward.
Is he Francis light, or is he as bad as Francis?
He's worse than Francis.
We got Leo Zagami, the Vatican expert, on. I've been to Rome with him. He's got all the different contacts, able to get into areas nobody else says. He predicted years before Francis, the first Jesuit Pope, was put in, that it would happen, how they'd use blackmail to take control. And it even came out mainstream news later that that is how Francis was able to get control. We know the Jesuits helped set up the infiltration of communists and pedophiles into the Catholic Church. So, Leo Zagami, we have the first American Pope being brought in. From my first glance, I'm not an expert like you, he appears to be globalist Francis light, at least on the surface, light version of Francis, agreeing with most of it. But they build Francis as a moderate. Of course, you document that he's not. But you are the Vatican expert of experts. What is your take on this individual, and were you expecting this? Leo Zagami, and best-selling author, researcher, I should add. Go ahead, Leo.
Thank you, Alex, for having me on. This is, of course, a pivotal moment and a turning point in the history of the Catholic Church, following, of course, the teachings and what was already outlined by Pope Francis, who just before he went into hospital was working with the U.S. Bishop Conference on yet again waging war against the Trump presidency. This is a sign by the cardinals that rather than choosing somebody from Asia or from Africa, they wanted to actually insidiously nominate and elevate to the pontificate somebody who is American. It's the first time in history, but Robert Francis Prevost is no friend of Donald J. Trump. He is, of course, somebody who comes from Chicago, but also with a vast history in South America that connects him to the infamous Jesuit order. And he is from an order himself, the Augustinians, who have worked hand in hand with the Jesuits on the control of the educational establishment. Today, if you think about the main issues Trump is trying to fight, immigration policies, well, in this regard, he will have to fight against this Pope because he's very much a supporter of what the Democrats were doing, open borders and all the rest. When it comes down to transgenderism and all that, that's another issue the Jesuits and, of course, this new Pope have been pushing, being open to transgenderism and the LGBTQ. And then you have a aside from all this, also the Vatican-China deal that this Pope will continue to support, which is a way for China of creeping inside the Catholic Church. The policies of the NGOs that, of course, are connected with the Vatican and the Catholic Church are the ones that have supported this massive immigration that has brought us in the situation where we are now. Of course, systematic warfare by the judicial system is also waged with the support of the Vatican. So this is no friend of real America. This is actually going to become a problem because most people, simple people, the ordinary folk would say, wow, we finally have the first American Pope. What a great thing. It's not a great thing. And I have outlined in my new book that just came out how Pope Francis has rigged this conclave which nominated his successor so he could have, of course, 80% of the cardinals on his side and nominate somebody who will follow in the policies of Vatican II. Those policies that Pope Francis said were only completed by 50%. There's another 50% that will, of course, not only destroy what the remains of Christianity, but then eventually will bring us to the integration with other religions, because now the next thing this Pope will do will step down from his role of Pope and rather be perceived as a bishop amongst bishops to favor the unification of all Christian churches. It's going to be a war against Trump waged by the church every day, in which we will hear, of course, from this Pope what you might hear from the Democratic Party, which has demonstrated in the last few years to be the political branch of the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order here in the United States. So it's not a good day. Some Americans might perceive it as a good day. For those who were hoping in a traditional Pope, in somebody who will support also a return to the Latin Mass, this will be, of course, a disappointment because this Pope has no intention in going back, but rather in moving forward. He was born in Chicago. He's part of the Augustinians, which is an order which is actually older than the Jesuits. It's been around for a very long time, since the 12th and 13th century. They established themselves. He's been the president, though, of the Pontifical Commission for Latin America, and that's where he worked hand in hand with the Jesuits in pushing forward more liberation theology, more of a mix of Marxism and Catholicism, which is what the church has been in the hands of Pope Francis, of course, that follows the dictates of the Second Vatican Council, in which the church was taken over in the first half of the 1960s by Freemasons and Jesuits who had, of course, progressive values. He served as Bishop of Chiclayo in Peru, which is, of course, another hellhole, and he did it from 2015 to 2023. He was general of the Order of St. Augustine. What does it mean, general? These kind of orders, just like the Jesuit order, have a general because they are rather military in their nature. And like I stated earlier, it has a lot of links to the Jesuits, especially when it comes down to education. So we are seeing the great war that Trump is conducting in favor of a different form of education here in the United States of America. Well, you are fighting against, of course, a system which is very much in the image of what the Jesuits want. I mean, Ford and Georgetown, these are the places that have shaped some of the most influential leaders. When you have Dr. Fauci doing what he has done, is because he's a Jesuit stooge. He doesn't only teach in Georgetown, he was also formed and shaped and molded since a very early age by the Jesuit order.
Well, Hillary Clinton has repeatedly said that she doesn't follow any ideology, but a Jewidical mindset of the Jesuits. And if people don't understand,
and Gavin Newsom, he has actually said it publicly. He follows the Jesuits. So here we're talking about the worst of the Democratic Party.
And obviously, Trump is sophisticated in many ways, but obviously he wants to say something nice because he likes Catholics in general. They're big supporters of his. But his statements just came out, Leo. Congratulations to Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, who was just named Pope. It is such an honor to realize that he is the first American Pope. What excitement and what a great honor for our country. I look forward to meeting Pope Leo. It will be a very meaningful moment. But in my first look, that's what I thought. I said, please get Zagami on. And of course, you're an expert on all these guys. And
he started on it because this guy has chosen my name, first of all. And the last pope who had this name was a conservative who fought Freemasonry, fought the establishment that eventually took over the church. So to actually take on this name for me is already an insult. But in any case, you are right in what you are saying.
Well, am I wrong, though? I mean, is he Francis light or is he as bad as Francis?
He's worse than Francis. Because Francis said that the policies of the Vatican II were only implementing by 50%, and then his successor will have to implement the next 50%. So,
and so now, explain how this works, as more cardinals die and more cardinals get in to vote for the next pope and policies. I mean, so this looks like the globalist takeover of the Catholic Church is intensifying, getting stronger.
First of all, this guy is born in 1955, Alex, so we're going to have to stand with this guy for a very long time. And in this long time, of course, the church will be further destroyed. But at the same time, he will follow up in the encyclica Fratelli Tutti, in unifying all the Christian churches, and later on, of course, Muslim, Jews, in this whole kumbaya situation in which he will step down of his role as Pope will be kind of minimized. He will incentivize the role of Bishop of Rome. He is somebody who, of course, has a lot of preparation for his role. His father was a veteran in the U.S. Navy, and he is of French and Italian descent. He has been for a long time working, like I said, especially with South America, and we know what
Leo, hold on, we got to go to break. And I already knew you had your new book out because I had to be out one day last week as a court stuff, but I watched it later, did a great job. I want to hear about your new book. I want to talk to Catholics in the fourth hour. Could you come on with me in the fourth hour and take calls from Catholics?
Sure. I mean, this is not a challenge towards your faith. I mean, your faith is your faith.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying you called Pope Francis years before it happened. So, I mean, you're the most accurate. So yeah. I've got to go to break, but could you come on at like 2:15 Central so we could take some calls? And then you could respond to the Catholics because you obviously know, like they do, a lot more than I do.
Absolutely. I mean, and like you said, my new book also explains why the Luciferian court made up of Illuminati, Freemason, think tanks from the Bilderberg.
Hold on, stay there. I got to go to break. Do 5 more minutes with us. And Steve Kirsch is coming on to respond to all this Bill Gates stuff and some new shocking studies confirming the mass deaths from the shots. But stay right there. Well, we got a new pope, American pope, and Leo Zagami, who has called what's going on in the Vatican for decades, unlike anybody else out there, best-selling author, is saying this guy's worse. Tell us some about your book. I want to have you back about that in the future. You'll be on the fourth hour taking calls from Catholics, not just in the U.S., but around the world to get their take and your response, Leo Zagami. But just in a nutshell, why are you saying this guy is worse?
Because in the year 2000, when Prevost was the provincial superior in Chicago, he protected a pedophile, Father James Ray, an Augustinian priest. He actually protected him, and this guy had credible accusations from 1991. And although the priory was close to a Catholic elementary school, Prevost did nothing to notify the school administration of the whole thing. This guy is a protector of pedophiles. He's the worst kind of guy we could elect as Pope. And as I explained in my latest book, the Jesuits and Pope Francis worked for months to prepare this new woke Pope. And in fact, the ring of Pope Francis was actually destroyed, contrary to tradition, not after the death of Pope Francis, but only 2 days ago, because they continued to use it as a seal on documents up to 2 days ago. So God knows what these people have done with documents that will, of course, surface later on. And this guy who protects the pedophiles, who is somebody already immersed in controversy from a very controversial convent in Chicago, suddenly becomes Pope, and of course very close to Obama, the Democrats, very much opposed to Donald J. Trump. Trump is being diplomatic, of course. This is a head of state, first of all, being elected, before being the head of the religion of billions of Catholics. So he has to be diplomatic. But things are going to be very different in a few weeks from now, or actually probably starting soon after his first Wednesday speeches, when he's going to start talking about immigration and his stand of immigration, which is, of course, a stand of immigration that is completely contrary to what Tom Homan or Trump stands for. So let's see what happens. And in the meantime, of course, with my new book, volume 12, which is the last installment of my confessions, because I wanted to bring you right up there where the pyramid culminates in the all-seeing eye, to bring you where the Jesuit general is, where the real power is. And of course, this power is the power that has decided ultimately that they wanted to put an American Pope because they want to challenge Trump directly. They could have, of course, chosen an African or an Asian Pope, which is probably the future of the church. But in this case, the priority for this woke church seems to be fighting Trump and his administration. So Pope Francis, of course, had always very much good things to say about Prevost. He put him as titular bishop of Sufar. He received his episcopal consecration during the time Pope Francis was a Pope. And on July 13, 2019, Prevost was also appointed a member of the Congregation for the Clergy in Rome, so in a way preparing him also for his role.
All right, Leo, stay. We're going to talk to you in an hour. We're going to take calls from Catholics then. But the big issue here is the leadership of the Catholic Church directing the Democratic Party to target traditional Catholics and conservatives in America. That tells you everything you have to know. The good news is isn't this just waking up Catholics more than ever?
Well, it's going to wake up those people who still had the illusion that we could go back to a conservative Pope, to somebody like J.D. Vance wanted, or those who love the traditional Latin Mass. It's never going to happen. Unfortunately, we are going further into wokeness with this new Pope.
It's amazing. Wow. Leo Zagami, we'll talk to you coming up in an hour. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are a lot of items exclusive to RealAlexJones.com that are not available at our main store, TheAlexJonesStore.com. Bigger discounts as well. 10% off with promo code BLUE for a limited time at checkout at RealAlexJones.com on Ultra Methylene Blue, hands down the strongest, the best. You've heard about it, experience it. It's not all equal. Ours is light years better than everybody else. We just got the best source. I was already taking Methylene Blue, had some good effects, but nothing like this. It is wild, and it funds the operation. And then Nitric Boost, hands down the best formula for cleaning out your blood, your cardiovascular system, creating nitric oxide, minerally filled in the morning when you wake up. But that's a side effect. It is so good for you. It is so amazing. Nitric Boost, Ultra Methylene Blue, and so much more. 10% off on top of the already big discounts at RealAlexJones.com with promo code BLUE.